Every day, Bill Frank
We're going to be doing one thing and one thing only.
talks with the best guests in America about business.
You mean business?
Monkey business?
Are you ready to get down to business?
All right, everybody's here, and that means we can get down to business.
Entertainment.
The entertainment capital of the world.
What kind of entertainment?
It's a storm of entertainment that brings down the house.
Sports.
Game on.
A grueling test of strength, speed, and stamina.
Wow, just like in the pros.
And the local community.
The rage in local radio.
Find out what's going on locally.
Radio keeps its eye on local events.
It's time now for the Bill Frank Radio Show on News Talk 1520 KVTA. Now, here's your host, Bill Frank.
As Congress struggles to pass a national budget, a similar budgeting nightmare is being played out in Ventura. In Ventura's case, a budget has been proposed and approved. The only problem? The budget is pure fiction, according to City Councilmember Neal Andrews. In this fiscal year, Ventura will run a budget deficit of $1.6 million. The city has run budget deficits for the preceding 4 years, ranging from a loss of $500,000 to a loss of $11.4 million. Joining me to explain the budget deficit is Bob McCord. Bob McCord is a co-founder of Taylor McCord, Praver, and Cherry. He has practiced civil litigation and criminal defense in Ventura County for decades. Bob is a founding member of the group Venturans for Responsible and Efficient Government, also known as VREG. He writes a bi-monthly newsletter shedding light on Ventura's fiscal management of taxpayer dollars. Joining me in the studio, hi Bob, how are you?
Good morning, Bill.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And let's get right into it, because this is a very interesting, also a very controversial subject. Ventura's got a new city manager, Mark Watkins, and we have 5 veteran city council members. Mark is a seasoned public servant. He understands the budgeting process. All the city council members have served through at least one budgeting cycle. With all of this experience guiding the city staff to write a budget, how is it that we continue to run deficits for the preceding 5 years?
The deficit is a function of obviously several factors. Revenues have decreased, and expenses, which were established years ago, have continued, and they continue to escalate. And in particular, for example, public safety unfunded pension obligations would be a very good example.
All right. And they continue to grow. Why?
Because public safety employees did not contribute anything to their public retirement plans for many years through CalPERS. CalPERS was doing wonderfully, getting great returns. So in the mid-90s, CalPERS communicated with the public entities, telling them that it wasn't necessary for anybody to contribute because their profits were so great. That all disintegrated in 2007. Reality struck that they should have been contributing, and then at that point in time, everyone learned that CalPERS had lost 50% of the value of the pension investments that they had been relying on for so many years and producing the income. Nobody was contributing, and now everybody's not only having to contribute in some fashion, but there's not enough being contributed to make up for the amounts that were lost for these pension plans, so that the pension obligations projected over the life of the pensioners is absolutely out of control.
All right, well, that's the expense side of things. What about the revenue side of things? Because the city puts together a budget. It includes both revenues and expenses.
City revenue, you'd have to look at the very different elements of the city revenue, but property tax is a very good example. We get a good percentage of our property tax. The second one is from sales taxes. That's principally where we get the revenue. Of course, beginning in 2007 to the present time, as sales went down, now the city is hoping that we have recovered from that. Here we are, 5 years down the road, and how are our revenues doing? Okay, but we're certainly not going to pick up another $5 million to make up the additional money we need to meet the expenses that we know are going to hit us this next financial year.
All right, well, let me understand this so that I'm clear. We have a budget that projects revenue that we will still run a $1.6 million deficit. Well, what does that mean if our revenues don't meet that expectation?
We're going to lose more money than 1.6. In fact, I met with the city treasurer, and the projection is now $2 million, assuming the revenue is going to be what they hope it to be. And in that regard, Nobody knows. It's just a guess.
I guess what I'm looking at the budget, and I'm a layperson, and I'm looking at this from the outside, but one of the things that I noticed at very high levels is that the city's expecting those revenues to grow by more than 5% from what they were last year. What puzzles me about that is that our whole national GDP is only going to grow between 2 and maybe 2.5%. And Ventura then is projecting our revenue to grow at twice the national average. What plans are there in place to make the revenue to the city grow at twice the national average?
The city folks do not offer an explanation for that, other than to say we have some positive things in the community that will help us grow, and they point to the new hospital at Community Memorial Hospital as being a potential source for that. Other than that, they don't have anything that projects growth. Recently, they had a great big collision in the public forum about inclusionary housing. Builders are not building. If builders don't build, they don't hire carpenters, plumbers, electricians. Money is not produced. You don't get revenue from houses. You don't get new housing structures. And the state housing department and our own community director did a study and concluded that housing has stopped. We've stopped growing. And if we stop growing, we are going to die.
Let me stop you right there, Bob, because when I talk to city council members offline, they tell me that there are 4 or 5 major projects that are waiting to get started this year and next year, what they term shovel-ready projects, a term that we have heard before. So are they misled, or are these shovel-ready projects not enough to bring up that $5 million of extra revenue that the budget calls for?
Got to keep in mind that $5 million is a lot of money in additional revenue, and you've got to build a lot of houses to build $5 million worth of revenue. There are projects that are planned out there, but of those projects, when they say shovel-ready, I'm a little cynical about that, because those are simply plans. If you would like me to point out all the supposed shovel-ready projects that were in place in 2007 and which imploded by 2012, you'd have to shake your head in dismay about the wonderful, glowing prospects of growth. There are some projects out there, but they are not that large, and they're not going to produce that kind of money.
My guest is Bob McCord. We're talking about Ventura's city budget. So, Bob, as we take a look at the budget, as I said before, I'm a layperson trying to understand this. You have actually dove in and read the entire budget. It is a massive document. How easy is it for a citizen to access, to read, and to understand Ventura's city budget?
Easy to access, impossible to read, impossible to interpret. You won't understand it. And in the words of a city official I spoke to about, it's equivalent of a data dump.
A data dump?
That's the word.
And what did he mean by that?
There is so much detail and information in here that if you ask yourself a specific question, for example, how much money are we projecting we're going to have to pay to CalPERS in the next fiscal year of 2013-14 for our public safety folks and our miscellaneous employees? It is not here. I spent 4 hours trying to extrapolate that information and try to put it on 5 pages of spreadsheet from the data. After 4 hours, I gave up.
Well, if you gave up after 4 hours and you had dogged determination, the average citizen probably isn't going to take that much time to try to read and understand it. So it comes back to the fundamental question. We have elected city council members. The city council members, really, their sole job is to look over the city manager and the city attorney. So when a budget is presented to them, and I'm asking you to speculate here, Bob, how many of them read, understand, and can accurately interpret the budget that's been placed before them?
I really cannot answer that question with any certainty except this. And I certainly don't use myself as the model for this, but I really try to read it and try to understand it. And then I show it to others in my group and ask them if I'm right, that I don't know what it says. And the answer I get from them is, what is this? It's just a bunch of paper with numbers on it, broken down by department, with so much detail you cannot separate the wheat from the chaff. And so if I'm sitting there as a city council member whose time is limited with so many things to decide, I have to rely on the city treasurer. I have to rely on the city manager to show me if there's a problem, to tell me in a summary fashion, what are our commitments to public safety? What's my commitments to this department or that department? How much are we spending for paper clips in this area? You can't tell. And so how can you make an executive decision on something if you have no executive summary? And the interesting thing about it is not a single budget in this city has been signed by the city treasurer since 2006.
And what does that tell us?
That the city treasurer is the guy who knows what's going on, but you have to remember he works for the city manager. And what I infer from this is that the city manager who was in place at the time directed that city treasurer not to prepare the budget in an executive fashion and consolidate it with enterprise funds, and all in this for the sake of clarity.
All right, but in fairness, that city manager is gone. They've made a change at the city manager level. The city council members stepped up, did what they felt they needed to do, and we now have a new city manager in place, as I said at the top, Mark Watkins. So he walks into this mess. What steps is he taking to rein this in so that it makes sense to not only the city council members, but we the citizens of Ventura?
If you read this budget, based on my conversations with those who know about the budgetary process at the city level, they are trying to correct this. They're trying to get a management tool in place so they really know what's happening. And their problem, again, is on the revenue side. This city right now does not have a CPA. He resigned last month. So we don't have a CPA that can do our CAFR, or the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. Nobody who can sign and certify that the financial data, the income and the expenses are accurate for the previous financial year. That's a major problem because that is a reliable document. This budget could be reliable, but it is in large part fantasy, and it is not a management tool at all. Nobody could manage their life this way.
Okay, my guest is Bob McCord. He is representative of Venturans for a responsible and efficient government. So, Bob, there's no CPA on staff right now, as you said in that last answer.
As of last week, there was not.
So when we need to prepare the CAFR document, when we need a CPA, how will we handle that in the time period that it's going to take to fill that position?
I think the answer I got was there will not be able to prepare a CAFR.
Isn't that a violation of what the state requires of Ventura?
Yes, there are requirements and there are rules, but if you're unable to comply with the requirements and the rules, there's always an escape hatch.
There are rules and there are rules and then there are rules. I see. All right, Bob. Well, you have done a massive amount of work on this, and you've published it in your bi-monthly newsletter, Res Publica. And I will contend that it's some of the best investigative journalism going on right now in Ventura County. First of all, I've got to ask you about the name, Res Publica. I mean, really? Latin at this point? First of all, why that title? And then second of all, who should read Res Publica?
Well, we hope everybody will read it, because the basic contention and purpose of is that if the voters, the people who vote people into office, understood what the people were about, if they understood the measures on the ballot, and then an educated, intelligent voter will cast the right vote as to how their community will go, what direction it will take. The voter who just casts the vote without making any effort to find out about the candidates or the issues, they don't do themselves any credit when they do that. They may think they are. I got to tell you, for years I did just that. I'd wait till the day before the election. I'd read the ballot. I'd read the voter pamphlet. I'd go, okay, this looks good, and I'd vote, and I'd go on and live my life. Boy, was I wrong. You need to find out what's going on. So when 5 years ago, or 2007, I decided I'm done with doing that anymore. I don't know where this is going, but I think we need to understand what's happening in our city. That's the reason for this Res Publica, which is Latin for the public thing.
All right, but now people like myself, we read the newspaper, and the newspaper gets thinner and thinner each year. There's less and less investigative journalism. How would people discover your newsletter if they wanted to learn more about it or maybe get some of this investigative journalism that you're doing?
Google it. VREG, Venturans for Responsible Efficient Government. That'll lead you to the site. The letters are posted on the site. And from there, you could just communicate with us. And then if you want to become a recipient on this, we send it out by email every couple months.
So people can subscribe by email and get it if they're interested. And that website, again, is
VREGventura.org.
VREGventura.org. Now, we do have an election coming up, and I'm not going to ask you who you're voting for or who you think we should be voting for. But if you want to learn more about the candidates, about their stands, where would you direct people to go to understand their platforms better?
That is a more difficult answer. I don't know of any single place to go to find out about the candidates. The Breeze, they did profiles on some of the candidates, but these are all self-serving statements. I mean, if you really want to find about the quality of the person, the integrity, look at their record. Ask people if they know the candidate. Find out. If you don't know, go out and ask your neighbor. Discuss it. That's the best thing to do about it. I mean, I'm not trying to pick on one person, though, but if you're looking for integrity and people who are willing or dedicating themselves to the public, and Mike Tracy, who's our mayor, has worked very hard. He was the chief of police. He's a citizen of Ventura. I mean, you're talking about a person who's a quality individual. He gets paid well for what he did. There's no doubt about it. And that's, of course, another issue with many people. But nonetheless, you've got a quality person here. I could go down the line, and I don't really want to do that because I want everybody to vote for the person that they want to be in that office to accomplish the things we need to accomplish.
What about the city's site where they list the contributions to the various candidates? If you go there, what information can you glean from looking at that public document?
Well, I'm unable to answer that because last week before I went away, I tried to do just that and I couldn't find it. So I can't really tell you what the results for that. I'm still struggling.
All right, that's fair enough. It is up there now, and that information is available to the public. Go to the City of Ventura's site, that's ventura.org, and you can find that information with a little bit of digging on the page. My guest has been Bob McCord, who is a founding member of Venturans for a Responsible and Efficient Government, also the editor of Res Publica newsletter. Bob, again, if people want to get Res Publica, where should they go?
Google it or go to the website www.vregventura.org.
Bob, it has been a delight. Thank you so much for being my guest. We'll talk to you down the road.
Talk to you later, Bill.